Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us in this. Do you hear me? You hear me okay? Yeah? Okay. So to thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. It's a bit towards the end of the day. Everybody is tired, but so happy to see some energy in the room. I want to first of all welcome you to this joint event between a number of very important partners who are working together to basically building resilience in communities through bringing together a number of innovations and technologies, in particular fish and fish farming into the drylands. And we have a very rich and very experienced panel members that we're going to be engaged in the discussion with, facilitated by Alexander, our moderator. But I just wanted to basically, first of all, introduce our board chair of WorldFish, Dr. Baba Yusuf Aboubakar, who is the chairman of the WorldFish since July 2019. He's a professor at the he's a professor and has led distinguished career as a leading scholar of animal breeding and genetics, as well as a global leader in the field of research for development in the field of agriculture. Professor Aboubakar is currently a visiting professor and chair at the University Research Council at the University of Abuja, in addition to serving on many other positions in and outside academia. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Dr. Aboubakar for his opening remarks. Professor.
Thank you very much. Can I remove this?
Yeah, it's working.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Ali, for those kind words. I want to welcome all of you to this side event, and also to appreciate Ali, Essam, and WOTR for putting together this side event. Undoubtedly, climate resilient aquatic foods have a key role to play in transforming global food systems. Aquaculture contributes less than 5% of the emissions associated with food production. Over the years, WorldFish research and innovation have been significantly scientifically proven to drive climate adaptation and mitigation opportunities in low and middle income countries, especially in Africa. Also, the integrated agricultural systems provide sustainable and efficient way to produce both crops and aquatic foods within a single interconnected system. The work of ICARDA through the Integrated Desert Farming Innovation Program highlights the importance of international collaboration in tackling climate-smart transformation in food, land, and water systems for future global food security. The demonstration site that some of you will visit, I think tomorrow, will illustrate that. It's a joint collaboration between ICARDA, WorldFish, IUMI, IFPRI, and ICBA. The essence of this particular event is to continue the conversation on raising awareness on the negative consequences of climate change and the need for global financial support towards mitigation and adaptation. The good news from COP28 that we all have heard is the investment commitment of $890 million in support of CGIAR's new investment case. Being the first time that food systems is getting such prominence at the heart of climate discussions, is a clear challenge for the CGIAR to accelerate its efforts towards consolidating on the One CGIAR integrated partnership process. Collectively, we will continue to raise our voices as the time to act is now. Today we have some experts, and I believe they will do justice to this topic. So we look forward to an engaging discussion. Thank you very much.
Let me also welcome you. My name is Alexander Müller. I'm the moderator of this session today, and I would like to start in thanking you for having joined us. You will not regret it, because here something is happening that usually doesn't fit together. If you look at the title of this session, it's Communities, Fish and Drylands. People might ask, why do we have fish and drylands together? And after this session, you will have the answer. They fit very well together if you have innovative packages where you try to combine the advantages of producing fish and the opportunities created in drylands. And therefore, I'm happy that you are here, and I would like to start thanking the DG of ICARDA and the board chair of WorldFish for having welcomed all of us. My task now is to briefly lead you through the agenda. We will receive 3 different perspectives on setting the scene first. Because in this event, we are also traveling to different parts of the world. We are traveling to India. My colleague and friend Marcella is going to represent water, and she's going to set the scene from an Indian perspective, and she has brought a little movie with us, but she will introduce it herself. And then I'm going to ask again the ICARDA Director General to present his perspective on the combination of drylands and fish. And last but not least, I'm going to invite Ahmed Nasser Allah, the country director from Egypt, for 5 minutes to present his perspective. So we are getting the perspectives from India, from North Africa, and from the Middle East, and we will learn what do they have in common, where are the differences, but why do we have to work together in order to tackle the challenges ahead of us for the people, for the planet, for the environment, and for the sake of all of us. So thanks again for having joined us, and it's now my pleasure, Marcella, to give you the floor to briefly introduce your movie.
Hello, everybody, and thank you again for coming here to participate and encouraging us by your presence over here. I come from an organization called the Watershed Organization Trust. The abbreviation is WOTR, Water. I'm going to present to you a small little film that tells a story of what we do in the semi-arid regions and the dryland regions of India in 10 states. But the story will be presented through one particular village, which is in the semi-arid rain shadow, water-scarce region. The film, please.
ज्यावेळेला सुरुवातीची परिस्थिती जर सांगायची ठरली तर या गावाला पाणी पहिल्यापासूनच शॉर्ट होतं. पाऊस अवेळी केव्हा जेव्हा वाटेल तेव्हा पाऊस पडत होता. तसं पाहिलं तर या पावसाची परिस्थिती अशी पडायला लागला तर 1-2 दिवस पडायचा, नाही तर 2-2 महिने वाट पाहायला लागायचा. ज्यावेळेला पीक पेरणीचं टाईम होतं किंवा शेतामध्ये जायचा टाईम होता त्यावेळेला पाऊस नसतो, आणि ज्यावेळेला नको त्यावेळेला तो पाऊस पडतो. आजही तीच परिस्थिती आहे. आमच्या भागात कोणत्याही प्रकारचं पाणी पिण्याची टंचाई होती. आमच्या इथे टँकर चालू होता. 93च्या अगोदर आमची पोरं, आमची लहान लहान मुलं त्या डोंगरांवरती घसरगुंड्या खेळत होते. म्हणजे विना अडथळा वरून तर खालपर्यंत यायला कोणताही अडथळा नव्हता. ना CCTV नव्हती, ना ट्रेंचेस नव्हते, ना 95च्या नंतर मात्र या भागामध्ये संस्थेकडून आणि कारखान्याकडून हे काम सुरू झालं. आज जंगलामध्ये तुम्ही कुठेही गेला तर जंगलामध्ये तुम्हाला झाडं तुम्हाला हिरवळ दिसेल. त्या खडकाचं नंदनवन झालेलं आहे.
Thanks a lot, Marcella, for taking us to India and showcasing how your organization is working to improve ecosystem services, livelihoods for people, but also how you use technologies to achieve this. Thanks a lot for this specific perspective. And I have to say, I'm coming from Germany, you might hear it. The farmers in the northwest of Europe are going to learn from what you are doing in the semi-arid areas, because climate is changing. The usual practices are not working any longer, and therefore in the near future we will see a very different flow of exchange between those people in the south, in the semi-arid and in the arid areas, and those who have been used to regular rainfalls, and the conditions have changed, and this might lead to a new collaboration and a new type of knowledge exchange. Thanks a lot, Marcella. My pleasure is now to invite to setting the scene again the Director General of ICARDA. What is your perspective on the challenges we are facing, and what solutions are you currently working on so that we in the audience understand how drylands, water scarcity, and fish are fitting together?
Okay, well, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak a little bit about this. I think if we can move the slide, there's a background slide. That's the one. So, rightfully said, the farmers are struggling. The drylands produces almost 40% of the food we consume on this planet. But it's also, seeing greater water scarcity, greater land degradation, and rising temperatures. And, the 1.5 degree that everyone is talking about, when you really take a regional and country focus, it's no longer 1.5 degree. This region is expected to hit 5 to 6 degrees by the end of the century. So even with 1.5 to 2 degrees, there is expectation a drop of 20% of the total production. So what about 5 and 6? Which really prompted us to try and think differently. CGIAR centers have been producing great technologies in the water front, on the fisheries front, on the land management front, protected agriculture, date palm, so many different things. They are all great in their own right. But how about bringing all of them together? I think that's really the innovation that we're trying to do here. For a long time, you would see many of the innovations we've developed in the CGIAR being taken up by a country or a project or a donor and being promoted on their own. But then the power of bringing them together as a system, where you extract the water, you first invest in fish farming, then you circulate, then you get a very rich water with a higher organic content, and you use it for aquaponics. You produce and add some value. And then from there you go into the protected agriculture. Use innovations that saves both water and energy to produce more, maybe vegetables and high crops. From there go into the date palm. Use high and water efficient techniques to do subsurface irrigation to date palm, saving even more water. And then moving from there to the forage plots, going to open agriculture and bringing forages from the gene banks that are less consuming to water and more nutritious so that you're able to feed the animals. Feeding the animals is a major challenge. Everywhere I go, every minister I meet, they don't only ask for feeding the people, they ask how can we feed the animals. This part of the world imports animal feed from everywhere, including from Egypt, fresh alfalfa, which doesn't make sense, right? It's just exporting water, it doesn't make sense, and by the time it comes here, it's no longer fresh. So there is no substitute from looking at what grows well here in these harsh environments, make sure they are refined, adapted, produced commercially, higher, best original varieties are scaled up and taken up with a very significant role for the private sector. So in short, this is what WorldFish, IMI, IFPRI, and ICARDA are trying to do as a new way of working within the CGIR. The leaders and the staff from these organizations have invested 2 years of work to put together what you see on the screen, the elements, even the remote sensing part for the tracking of the red weevil pest transboundary, but also nationally in developing smart algorithms. And now with AI, we are also seeing new opportunities for refining this much further. So by way of setting the scene, this is what I would like to say at this point in time, and I'm happy to come and specifically speak a little bit deeper about some of those innovations that are specific to this region. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. The key words I am taking away is you're working on systemic solutions, not improving one technology after the other, but trying to integrate solutions. And when you explained how you are using water, it's what is very often used in discussions on bioeconomy, creating a system of using natural resources in a cascade so that you can use it multiply, so that you can create multiple benefits. Thanks Absolutely. A lot for presenting it to us. Now I would like to ask the Egypt country director, Ahmed Nasser Allah, to share his perspective with us, especially with a view on what is the main challenge in your region and how are you going to tackle it, and why is this collaboration ICARDA WorldFish so unique? Ahmed, please.
Thanks a lot. It's a great pleasure to be with this senior committee. For colleagues' information, WorldFish exists for more than 45 years, working in both in aquaculture and fisheries, and aquatic food in general, which include aquaculture and fisheries. My colleagues know that fisheries catch is almost stable for the last 20 years. There is no more room for increasing fish supply from the sea. And nowadays, fish from aquaculture, more than 50% of the supply to the market globally, not only in Egypt. In Egypt, it's 80%, but globally, more than 50%. This indicates how important farmed fish it is for food security. If we look over by 2050, population will reach close to 10 billion. How to feed these people? Fisheries catch is stable, and there will be more competition in fisheries. Fisheries catch price will increase because demand will increase. How to feed these people? The only room is through aquaculture. WorldFish is working to address this through several approaches. One of them, genetic selection program for farmed fish species, is because there is most of farmed fish species is wild. Mm-hmm. So this is serious, and the ICARDA is working the same with Syria, grains. Also, we do innovation in fish feed, as material available for fish feed is not as before. Using fish meal, also we catch fish to feed farmed fish, so also we need to protect the sea and avoid fisheries turning to fish meals. We work through innovation in production system. Climate smart aquaculture, introduction of climate smart aquaculture with different aspects of farming system. Farming system are different. Applying climate smart aquaculture in all systems is very important. This takes us to Mr. DG point, which is integrated agriculture aquaculture. We worked in this approach in Egypt since 2010 to test integrated agriculture aquaculture and do commercial evaluation of this and see how this benefit the farmer and benefit the environment. So this is very important solution. As water scarce in Suwana region and water cost pumping from underground is very high. So as water cost is the same, using the water for more producing more than crop, this is more economical use of water for water unit. Especially Suwana region is scarce water area and food availability is limited. And if we add fish food to them, fish food is aquatic food which is rich in nutrients value. So this will contribute to fish, to consumer health. So this is just in brief to preparing the seed. Over to you.
Thanks a lot for highlighting again that scarce resources have to be managed not only more efficiently, but you were talking about multiple use of resources. And I think this is the common denominator, what you all have presented here. There is no way to pump more water. We cannot rely on rainwater. And therefore, innovative ideas of multiple use of existing resources in an efficient way is the way forward. Dear colleagues and participants here, after this setting the scene, we are going into an interactive panel discussion where I'm going to raise some questions to the panelists, and then afterwards be prepared. You have the opportunity to raise a question. If nobody raises his or her flag to raise a question, I will appoint someone to raise a question. So better start thinking about what kind of question you are going to raise. And I would like to do the following thing. I would first like to talk about the challenges in the region. So we start with the challenges. What are, from your perspective, the barriers, the obstacles that you are currently facing in achieving sustainable increases in food production and restoring the semi-arid and dry landscapes? This is the first question. Then I would like to go towards a solution and try to find out if we have one solution that fits for every region, or do we have one approach with different solutions that have to be targeted towards the region? Therefore, Ali, I would like to ask you to present what is, from your perspective, the main obstacle, what are the barriers to really achieve sustainable diets in an area where population is growing and climate change will have a very negative impact?
Okay, well, excellent question, but you know, you probably need a whole week to be able to answer this question.
We have time.
Yeah, allow me, you know, to start by water. Water is the most critical factor in a limiting factor that makes the potential for production a constraint. I mean, everything else you can really find ways to deal with: degraded soils, systems, policy, market, everything that you can easily find a solution. So this is why in ICARDA we've focused on looking at water efficient techniques. And for example, if you look, can we have that screen, that picture on the screen again? You know, in this part of the world, the protected agriculture, the plastic houses have been imported from Europe, and plastic houses simply trap heat inside rather than anything else. And in a hot environment, it just, you know, converts that production environment into an oven. And so systematically, people have been using cooling systems through radiators, similar to what you would see in your car, pouring water on it with a ventilation fan. This has actually been using 8 times more water than the water you put in to grow the plant itself. So we have substituted this cooling system by putting a net house that allows movement of air and does not trap heat inside. And then instead of cooling the environment, we started to cool at the root zone of the plants. So these techniques combined with no lead penalty have actually allowed us to save almost 70 to 80% of the water. This is also combined with very innovative drip emitters that were developed by MIT from the US. That, drip irrigation saves 50% of the water. This module also is called ultra-low pressure emitters, which saves 40% more water, and then the total pumping cost would be cut down by almost 70 to 80%, which means reduction in investment cost, allows you to use solar panels without having a huge thing, and then also allowing you to have a cooling system that is very affordable to farmers. So this is just one example of the components that you see on the screen of this integrated desert farming. And by allowing this to go, for example, with the heat-tolerant tilapia varieties that are coming from WorldFish, then you're able to grow fish in hotter environments that would otherwise not be possible to do. So that's why the richness that exists in the CGIAR is great innovations across the board. We need to think differently, deploy them differently, and have the right mindset of partners and commercial entrepreneurs to join on board and start to take these solutions, to scale.
So, thanks a lot. I would like to come back to my initial question about barriers and obstacles. These are impressive figures.
Okay.
It's a story that should have been told, that it should be told every day because it's success. So what are the barriers to implement it?
Okay, there are a number of barriers. One, the policy environment. I mean, policymakers are very reluctant to bring about change, whether in the area of subsidy, whether in the area of bringing new commodities that are more water efficient to consumers simply because of the fear of consumer rejection, and the question of the economics. So, if I take them very quickly, the consumer. In Egypt, they are the largest wheat importer in the world. Unfortunately, it's disgraceful with all the water and land they have. But that's the reality of today's world. Half of what we introduced in Egypt is broad barley, which is a dryland crop. And we've been able to prove through experiments that you can actually mix up to 20 to 25%. You make it flour, you mix it with wheat, and then you are able to produce baladi bread. The minister will tell you, I need to produce 750 million loaves of bread every day for Egyptians to eat, right? So by saving 25%, that's already a huge saving. Now, you need to make sure that the consumers will accept that, and we have tested that, and there is no major difference. If you take the question of economics, when we plan for the future, we don't look at the economics today, and I stand to be corrected by Professor here. We are looking at the climate change in the future. So whatever is not economically feasible today may become your only option in the future. So we need to get ourselves prepared to eat what we can grow and not insist on growing what we would like to eat. It's going to require a huge change behavior in the consumers, and also trying to convince the investors about the economics, about future investments in climate change. Last and not least, I think the CGIAR has the capacity to produce policy-based recommendations on the basis of science evidence. This way, ministers will not be shaky when they take up a particular decision because it's based on science, proven experiments, and they can always have a fallback position to empower their position in parliaments. Over.
Very clear, thanks a lot. What the DG of ICARDA doesn't know is I'm coming from politics. And I know very well the difference between a scientist making a proposal and a politician getting voted out of the government because he has implemented a proposal. And therefore, I really like your answer, because appropriate policies have to be designed, that solutions can be implemented, and you also have to tell a story so that the consumers know why changes are affordable, and then it's a package where the scientists are happy and the politicians didn't get voted out of the office. Therefore, thanks a lot for this explanation. Marcella, we have heard the importance of policies, the importance of technology. I am following the work you are doing in India, and I know that you are applying apps and you are working also with modern technologies. How do you approach this problem, especially when you're working on ecosystems?
So I know the work that ICARDA has done and the impact it has on policy can be tremendous. And they have a backing of a lot of scientists. And I'm coming from the NGO sector, working with communities in a very small way. Yet we believed that we have something to offer. Because the issue that we are coming from, the way we need to contribute to policy, we need to look at what's happening really on the ground in farmers in their daily lives. We have 69% of India that is semi-arid, and the challenge to face this, it's semi-arid, subhumid, and dry and arid. So with the 69%, we have 55% of our country that belongs to the farming community. How do we reach out to this large population? And our food security depends on it. And so the aspects that I want to present over here is the farmers where they live, they are surviving on the agriculture that they can grow in this area. So their move is to take as much as they can. It's survival. They will cut the trees, cut the forests, because they believe land will produce more. And they will exploit the water resources. Those who have water resources will exploit the water resources, not worried about what's happening to the neighboring farmers whose wells run dry. So this is the kind of challenge we are facing in large tracts of India. You may know we are the greatest exploiters of groundwater. So coming from that situation, we realize that we have to take into consideration the reality of the farmers right across wherever they are. Okay? On the other hand, we also realize, most of the time, very often policy realizes it, this is a problem, we want an immediate solution. Now, this is a big challenge. When we look at agriculture, and all the three groups that we've been talking about it, it is a systemic approach. The land is not just land and its production. The land and the ecosystem services depends on the forest, on the water ecosystems, not just the water service. It depends on the biodiversity. It depends on whether it is a flatland, whether it is a riverine system, whether it is a spring. So it depends on the whole ecosystem, and that's where we all depend on. So what we realized as an NGO, that we need to work on an ecosystem-based approach and revive the ecosystems so that we continue to get the land, we get our production, the water resources that we need. And to protect these systems, we have to protect it in a healthy way. So this is the type of approach that we are taking. And what we have realized, we need to work at it it's a challenge, actually, to work at it with the community. Mm-hmm. It's a challenge to bring in the government departments into it. And it's a challenge to get, the different scientific bodies, because I think this happens in most countries. It definitely is in India. Each of the departments are sectoral. We have excellent research institutions, but they work in sectors and they don't talk to one another. What is it that we at the community level need? What does the NGO need? What does the practitioner need? What do the farmers look for? An integrated approach. So what we decided in the organization, some years ago, it happened about 2002 or 3, we said we can't make sense of the sectoral science that is out there. We need to bring it all together from the local level. So we started our research unit, which I head, and this looks at it from the farmer's perspective. What is the geology? What is the hydrology? What are the resources? What is the soil type? What is the climate? It differs from this from another area. And this was the approach we started following. And the results you have seen in the film. So this is the challenge what we have. Now what we have started taking to address the challenge, to look at the challenge, government needs and policy requires evidence. And it is this evidence that we are looking for to bring from the ground up. So we look at it from an integrated scientific approach, looking at all the different factors, looking at the climate impact on it, and then getting the data over a long period. Our biggest challenge we have over here in India also, probably everywhere, when you look at the targets, you get a snapshot, and we pat our backs and say, we have improved the targets. The question is, how sustained are these impacts? This is one of the biggest challenges that we have. Mm-hmm. Are the indications right to give us the indicators over the long time?
Thanks a lot, Marcella. I would like to ask you, Ahmed, after we have heard convincing examples of the complexity of finding solutions, how different levels, not only government departments, but scientists, consumers, farmers, politicians have to work together. You are working on the ground in Egypt, and if I remember right, with the start of the war in Ukraine, suddenly the world got to know that Egypt is importing 60% of its wheat from Ukraine, and suddenly it was at risk. So how can you develop in an area that is threatened by climate change, where population is growing, how can you develop a solution where you in the region are strengthening food production with the examples we have heard? What are the ingredients you would need in Egypt to really start transforming the food system? And okay. You don't have a week time for the answer, only 5 minutes.
Okay, good. Okay, I take as a point from Mr. DG and Mrs. Marcella, policymaker need evidence. And to provide evidence, you need more fund to do practical research in more regions. For instance, in Suwana, we work in 34 countries. We need to work in more countries and to do more research. So fund to develop demonstration and do something on ground, provide solution. This solution should have integrated approach. And I'm here calling to study the case of India. Because India is semi-arid land. They produce 4 million tons of fish. Mm-hmm. They export $5 billion of shrimp value. Yeah. India didn't suffer from rice, from wheat grain during the Ukraine war. Mm-hmm. So we need to study other country experience and learn from them and transfer the technology. And also, as part of this, ICARDA is develop a strain of wheat. We need to develop a strain of soya. We need to develop a strain. The corn exists, but need more to tolerate climate resilient. So science input to provide evidence to policymaker is required. Policymaker, by the end of the day, will be enforced to adopt solution. Mm-hmm. When they find a proven solution. Who will provide proven solution? This is international research organization in partner with national research organization and in partner with local community. We need to work together to provide evidence to the policymaker, and this will put them, and this will enforce them to follow and learn from others. Over to you.
Thanks a lot. I would like to invite the chair of the board of WorldFish to share his perspectives, because this is a unique situation. We are talking about drylands, and suddenly fish pop up as part of the solution. This thinking is innovative, facing several challenges, but we also have many, many good experiences. How do you see this collaboration of WorldFish, the world's most important publicly funded research institute on fish? How do you see this collaboration with Drylands, and what does it mean for WorldFish? How do you have to change to meet the demands of this new undertaking?
Well, I want to start by saying that, when you look at what ICARDA, WorldFish, and UMI are doing, it's a classical example of what we want to happen on CGIAR.
Okay.
And, I say this because within the last 8 months, within the CGIAR, we've had several conversations about what we want to do and where we want to go. And we started with, unified governance. And today, we have moved from that, and we are talking about integrated partnership, because there were challenges in terms of what unified governance means. Some people interpret that as top-down approach. So what these centers are doing is a classical example of what CGIAR should be, perhaps by next year, hopefully. Secondly, just to emphasize what Ali said about the consumers. The policymakers could take decisions in terms of what they want. But often you will discover that if the consumers are not, they're not convinced in terms of changing their mindset, it's a Herculean task. And I can tell you that when Dr. Adesina was Minister of Agriculture in Nigeria, he tried to see that, because Nigeria is the largest producer of cassava in the world, how we'll have 10% of cassava and wheat, so that it reduces the cost of importation and so on and so forth. And it just didn't work because the taste was different. And there wasn't enough work done in terms of reaching out to the consumers and convincing them. So policies are good, but then the consumers have to be carried along in terms of implementation.
Thanks a lot. I have noted 2 words that have come up in all your contributions. The first one is partnerships, and the second one is integration. And I would like to start with partnerships, because what you just said means we have to think partnerships in a broader way, not only between different ministries or between different research institutions, but to involve both farmers, they have to produce, and consumers, they have to buy. And therefore my question to you, Ali, is what kind of partnerships are needed to translate this scientific undertaking, these success stories that you have presented, into broader policies and to gain acceptance by both farmers, politicians and consumers? So the partnership as the key issue. And then I would like to come back after you have presented your perspective on partnerships on the question how integration really works.
Okay, I see partnership from very different angles. Partnership is a very effective way to bring about impact. Like I mentioned, the model of the integrated desert farming, it brings in individual technologies to work together as part of a system. And these technologies come from different centers, from WorldFish, from IMI, from ICARDA, from policy. So it doesn't have to be always generated by the same leading partner, but it's just about how you work together differently. So if we want to expand the impact, I would also look at the partnerships well beyond centers working together, to organizations like Marcella mentioned, and actually Ahmed mentioned. How do we learn from other countries? How do you bring this as within an open and transparent partnership so that you're able to fix your own problems? But I want specifically to bring in another point, maybe partnership / technological innovation to address the problem. I was in Qatar about 4 weeks ago, and I was in a major conference, and I met people who are actually working on rain induction here from the UAE. So a week later, I was here in the UAE, and I said, I want to go and see the experiment. So they were very open, very transparent. I went in, I saw the experiment. They showed me how you do it. Aeroplanes went up in the sky. I went home, I had dinner, I slept. All night long, it was pouring rain. Thunderstorms, lightning, as if the sky was falling. So it's real. It is very effective. There are published papers on this. So if you take this solution to the drylands of North Africa, from Morocco all the way to Syria and Lebanon, you have the 120, 150 millimeter of rain belt. With rain induction, you can actually increase rainfall between 60 to 80%. So you can have easily 250 millimeters of rain, which means you can grow wheat in these environments from the varieties that ICARDA produced in Morocco that grows very well at 200 millimeters, which would have otherwise required 4 millimeters of rain to produce under normal conditions. So a totally out of the box through combining solutions, combination of capabilities, thinking in a very non-conventional way, and then bring about relief. So I also believe that we continue to focus on the pessimistic, the doomsday scenario for climate change. But I don't think we have thought enough about what science is going to bring by way of solutions, the advancement in science. You look at this IPCC report, with all due respect, what's going to happen by the end of the century, 5-6 degrees. But yes, but over those 70 years, the science is going to evolve in ways we have not seen before. So the solutions will come, and will come from within. We just need to make sure that we prioritize investments in innovations and science. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Marcella, partnerships.
See, if we look at this whole, if we look at the whole system, sustainable food systems transformation, and that's what we are all talking about, we cannot but work at partnerships. Coming from the rural community perspective and from the NGOs, what we realize is that the primary stakeholders are the farming community, people living in rural areas who give us the water and the food that we need, including the water management. The rest of us, the secondary stakeholders, are the neighboring households, the neighboring villages, and the rest of us are all tertiary stakeholders, but playing a very important role and coming with different areas of strength. With government, the policies, the scientific body having their own scientific strengths, the media that plays a role in communication, NGOs that play a role in the last mile connectivity. So each stakeholder has to come in with their area of strength, where we all talk together with the communities. And this is a kind of workshops that we organize with rural communities, where we discuss the partnerships in order to make things happen. And so that we can learn from one another. It's not always easy, because most of the time, we, the so-called inverted commas, educated, I'm putting it in inverted commas, think that we know more. But most of the time we realize that the farmers living in that area have a lot of knowledge and first-hand knowledge. And they teach us a lot because they understand it better. And when they learn and understand the scientific pictures, they are able to respond better than if we, tertiary stakeholders, instruct them what to do.
Thanks a lot, Ahmed. I would like to challenge you in a specific way. Partnerships, what does this mean for international partnerships? Egypt is a country, we all know it, that depends water supply on the River Nile. And management of the water flows on the Nile is not an easy thing, let me say it in this way. So if we are talking about partnerships, what does it mean for international partnerships to ensure that the basic requirements of water supply is guaranteed, taking into account transboundary waters? Egypt is not the only country that relies on transboundary waterships. So what is your take on partnerships with maybe a focus on international cooperation?
Okay, if we take the example of CG cooperation under Siwana in Egypt, this is a great example. In Egypt now there is 1.5 million Faddan project, which in desert area, and the government allow farmer in this area to have integrated fish within the system. So as a CG working together in such and partnership in such technology, because this technology required science from fish, science from water, science from plant growing, science physiology about fertilizers and input from one system to the another, social, gender, technology, and using IT and technology. So this, you could say, university of all dimension could work there in this integration system. So with the CG, we tried before to work in integration as a WorldFish alone. We didn't achieve much success. Before also, people in horticulture department in Egypt tried to do work from their perspective, but didn't work. So now we work with a CG with different triangle, and Mr. DG now take this point as integrated desert farming program to be in Gulf, and will be there in Egypt. I promise to be in Egypt, because the demand is there. We talk about 1.5 million faddan. We talk about Wadi al-Mughra, which is about 200,000 faddan. And the government there, and we met with the Reef Masri company, Egyptian countryside company, and they link us with the farmer who do integrated system, and those farmers are in need for support. But such support needs some fund. To be honest, I have to be honest here. Yeah, not to over-promise without having capability to achieve what we want to do in ground. So having CG integration with a partnership, this is a great example. Plus partnership with national organization and university and society and community. We need to make sure this community are supporting what we do and accepting this technology. And I'm sure they accept, they called us. We have done under Suwana with the studies assisted integration in Egypt, and this is a great example of the work we can do together. So partnership in Egypt under CG, this is a great success story. Over to you.
Thanks a lot. Chair, what is your take on partnerships? And then be prepared, before we are going to the next round to talk about integration, I would like to open the floor for you for comments, criticism, or you can also praise some of the panelists because you have learned something new. But first we are listening to the chair of WorldFish, the board of WorldFish.
Yeah, I think when we talk about partnership, and I want to restrict myself to the CGIR in terms of the reform that is ongoing. The CGIR is a very complex organization, and when you want to reform it into one system, the challenge is how do you do that without creating a lot of problems within the system. Mm-hmm. And that's why the journey has taken this long. But at the end of the day, it's all about trust. When you are going to take such major decision, you have to build trust. And that is where the partnership comes in. And I have, I was executive secretary of the Agri Research Council in Nigeria, a huge system of about 10,000 staff with about 18 research institutes. And most often you will discover that there is lack of connectivity between the centers and the national systems. And that is the partnership that Ahmed was talking about. So we are hoping that as we move into 2024, for me, I think it's going to be a watershed period for the CGIR, because I think that is when we have to just get it right so that we move forward, particularly with respect to the issue of the climate change.
Thanks a lot. Now the question is, does anybody from you want to raise a question or provide a comment? Yes, please. Please briefly introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Munir, and I'm from Bangladesh, and first question, that we always talk about the system approach. But this system approach works when we even present in a small scale. For example, the village, or maybe in our country we call union level. But it's really difficult when we scale up in a larger scale. What is the main challenges that why you couldn't replicate in a larger scale? Second question to you, sir. We always blaming the policy sometimes. The policy isn't good, policymakers not good. But at the same time, for us who work in the ground, it is really difficult to articulate the policy into the ground because there is a big disconnection. Is it because the policymakers they don't have connection with the ground or anything else? Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Let's try to answer these questions, and please prepare yourself for the next question or comment.
I think you have put your finger on the pressure point. And because of this complexity, I think many people have shied away from working within the system and looking at the possibilities of integration. It's very easy when I look at my crop, I want to put this seed, it produces that type of yield, I can measure the yield, I can compare it with other lines, I can look at the total improvement, I have basic information. There is very straightforward basis to conduct the analysis and assess progress. But once you look at the system, you take this, first of all, let's complicate the experiment a little bit further. When you start to look at the water that this plant consumes, when you start to look at the nutrients that this plant needs, when you look at other factors, then the entire experiment becomes a lot more complex. But I think with the advancement in data collection and processing, it's now feasible. But once you go now outside the crop and start to look at the integrated desert farming with the fish ponds, with the forages, with the animals, with the fish ponds, with the irrigation, with the solar, with the remote sensing, and look at the total improvement in the entire system, how would you handle the attribution? Is it because of more efficient irrigation system, or better seed variety, or better data management, or what? So it requires a different way of looking, well, first of all, a different way of capturing the data, identifying the research questions, putting a methodology to capture and assess and refine the data, and then at the end come to attribution so that you're able, if you really want to improve the total output, you need to know which ones you increase or refine, which ones you reduce or adjust, and that's why it's so complex. But because of the complexity, people have shied away from it for a very long time. Now, I'm hoping that, and I speak under the control of some of our scientists in the room, that in spite of the complexity, at this point in time, we have no choice but to jump in. And with the new tools that are available in science today, I think it should be possible for us to get it done. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Marcella.
You put a challenging question to me, and this is a reality that we all face. We've been trying to understand what drives policy. Because, if we do not work together with the government will stay, we will not stay as NGOs. So this is a reality we have understood. So in understanding government, what we realized is that there are two ways of approaching the situation. There are certain things that require urgent responses. There is a problem, there is a drought, or there are floods. Those need responses that are urgent. On the other hand, the other response is a systemic response, which for most of the time we have not yet understood. So it's more challenging to take up a systemic, slow response because the answers, the impacts come in a much longer time. So this is a challenge that governments face, that this is from the way we in my organization have understood. So the other issue that what we find is what works in certain areas is very good for certain areas, but it does not work in other areas. Now, this is what government struggles with. Again, I have to say this is the understanding we have of government. I may be wrong. So, good responses work very well, but are problematic actually in other areas. So that is the big problem. So what we realized is another big challenge faced by not only governments, but I think all donors. I've heard it even coming from big institutions, and one of my big donors once said, don't talk to us, don't allow us to talk about the mistakes we made. Always the results that we give in after we have evaluated programs cannot show in mistakes. We always want to show it well, and I think as an organization we realize this is one of the big issues we face. And I'm saying it because we were in the same situation. We are sometimes in the same situation. We are reluctant to face mistakes till we realize we have to change our terminology. We have to say certain things work well in certain circumstances and certain things do not work well where we need to modify. Now, if we accept this sort of a perspective and present it in this way, I realize that we could talk about mistakes we made. So I think this is the way we would look at how to handle some of this. I don't know if I've answered you.
Thanks a lot. A brief intervention from my side. Thanks for mentioning it. I was working 8 years in FAO in Rome in the headquarters, and there I've learned projects never fail, but projects also never scale. And there's an inherent problem. If we don't realize where the problems are and where we do not really deliver, and if we don't improve our delivery systems, we are not going to tackle the systemic challenges we all are talking about. And therefore, I am very much supporting what is called the transdisciplinary approach, bringing together all forms of knowledge, of course scientific knowledge, traditional knowledge, knowledge of farmers, but also the knowledge of politicians about how to run a system. If we don't bring it together, the word systemic challenge is very easy to be spoken out, but implementation is far from being really achieved. And that's the beauty of what you have presented today in this side event, that you are talking not only about integration, you are living integration, and you are bringing together not only different centers of the CG, which is also a big step forward, but you are integrating the example of Egypt, different types of knowledge in order to move forward. And this knowledge, this result then can be used also in Bangladesh, not to copy it one-to-one, but using the principles, learning the lessons, and then trying to also integrate at your country in a different way the production of fish and managing resources in drylands. Is there another question? We have 20 more minutes. We have a last round here. Who wants to raise a question? Here, I see someone. Could you please bring the microphone? And please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. My name is Jane Kinya. I come from Kenya, working with African Biodiversity Network. We promote indigenous systems, but there's always convergence with the new knowledge. Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm quite interested at a personal level with the system. But I was just curious to know, for example, what would be the investment if it was, should it be done at the community level, or can also it be done at household levels? I'm just looking at maybe I'm just thinking of the investment. Yeah, because sometimes we think of the output before we look at the gains. It's just good to know.
Thanks a lot. The investment. Can this type of different of farming, can it only be done by CGIAR centers because they get a lot of funding, or what is your idea of upscaling or scaling out so that this technology, this approach is available to farmers in Kenya?
So the concept as designed is designed with many components as part of the system. And we wanted to start with a complex configuration. Because you start there, it's easier to simplify. But the idea here is the illustration you see on the picture will have to be very different among different locations. It will be influenced by the environment, the available natural resources. If you're talking, for example, about different environments within the same country, so it may be date palm in one place, maybe it's olive trees in another place, maybe it's argan trees or karoub in Morocco. So the idea is you start somewhere and then look eventually to develop multiple models using different available resources. Also, the other challenge is the salinity. And this is a very typical in the drylands. Many part of the land that Dr. Ahmed Nars spoke about is saline soils. And more complex even, it's pumping saline water. So that's why, for example, we're having partnership with the Center for Biosaline Agriculture, ICBA, because they bring in a specific knowledge to add and supplement what we have in the CGIR. Tomorrow we're going to be visiting the farm and see what are the technologies that they have tested across different locations. CGIR, ICARDA in particular, have worked on salinity in Uzbekistan and Iraq and a few other locations. But we don't have that deep expertise and special knowledge. You need to really widen, and that brings us back to the question of partnerships. You don't always have to build skills to the maximum level needed in every area where you go. It's really trying to do smart partnerships. Coming back to the question of investment, once we have accepted the fact that the system can take very different configurations, it can also be different levels. It doesn't have to have all the components in the same system. It may be multiple components, 2 or 3 or 4, depending on what's available. The model that we've built here is in the order of between $250,000 to $300,000. And it's about an area of, I would say, a couple of hectares. But it involves all the net houses, the fisheries, the water distribution, the pumping, the solar panels, and of course, a lot more investment in the design experiment itself and the controls. For this to go to scale, it's going to be much cheaper because you're still at the very high end of development costs. Once that is developed and once you have stabilized and have the templates and the different combinations, rolling it out at scale is going to be a very commercial viable, especially when you look at the returns from multiple systems working together as one compared to the returns from individual systems working on their own. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Marcella. I would also like to learn from you what is your take on investments, first question. The second is, I wanted to talk with you about integration, because we know that India was very successful with the Green Revolution some years ago. You increased the yields and everything, and now suddenly out of the blue, you find out groundwater levels are very low and you have to deal with natural resources in a different way. What is your answer to my question of integration, investments and integration?
Okay, I'll begin with the integration first because the investments are related. Yes, the Green Revolution did work wonders for India when it started. It saved us from famines. Prior to that, India suffered a lot of famines. However, we know what happened with the Green Revolution as we exploited the natural resources. I'm using the word a little crudely, exploited, because we didn't realize it. And I know in my own organization and when we got when we saw the impact of land management, sustainable land management along watershed lines, the moment water increased, agriculture increased, chemical use of agriculture increased, and we were promoting it, not realizing that we were making mistakes. And when we realized we knew we had to undo things. So the question here is, seeing the water quality deteriorating, seeing the soil health deteriorating, and the exploitation of the natural resources and the degradation that took place, the integration that came in was, we realized that we first need to restore the natural system, the watersheds, from land and water, save the soil, save the resources, force water underground. And this is where it is heavy investment at the initial stage. After that, smaller investments with people, with the community, with the whole community. Incidentally, we took the entire villages together on a landscape basis. And then we realized that investing in how do you improve agriculture practices for it to be more sustainable, looking at soil health, looking at the climate risks, promoting a little bit more of agro-biodiversity, looking at the forests and the biodiversity in general, and then taking data back to the community with water quality, with the groundwater levels, with what's happening. Investments initially are heavy, including water management. What we realized, we did a study over a 10-year period of control and others. And what we found, which happily surprised us, the cost of inaction in villages where we did not follow the process was 4 times as compared to there where we had invested, even though apparently the investments are heavy. It does need time, it does need patience, but the results are sustained long after project is over. We took it 5 years after the project is over. Results you could see on the slide. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ahmed. Do you also consider the costs of inaction in your projects, and how are you going to deal with integration of the different technologies and the different approaches in Egypt?
Your question talking about cost to the institution or to the farmer, and this is a big difference. For farmer, cost for farmer, usually farmer invest when he saw a system or proven module to him indicate that this, if he invest $1, will bring to him more than $1. If he didn't see this, he will never invest. So to convince farmer of investing, you need to prove to the farmer. And to prove to the farmer, you need to invest as an organization, as a research organization, and to work with them in partnership. Okay, for instance, use the farmer facility to demonstrate our system. Investing on people capacity in the center and on the farm as well. So investment could take several approach, and sometimes with limited fund availability, sometimes we are enforced to go for priority of investment, where we should go. For instance, in Egypt, if I am a decision maker, I'll go for priority investment on a strategic seed. This, for instance. So investment is according to priority and food security aspect and fund availability. Over to you.
Thanks a lot. I think this was a very important differentiation. Costs for whom? And there's a difference in investing in a research program to scale up technologies and to decrease the cost for the farmers, but always consider the investment case. We have 13 more minutes, 5 minutes in the end. I will hand over to the chair of the board of WorldFish to draw his conclusions, but I would like to go back to you, Ali, for 2 or 3 more minutes, because we started with the presentation of the Integrated Desert Farming Innovation Program. Where do you currently stand? What are the next steps? And could you tell us what you want to achieve in the next years, and what does it mean for the collaboration inside CGIAR? So a flashlight into the future, please.
Okay, right now we have built one full demonstration model here in the UAE, which is still being refined. Hopefully it will go live early next year, possibly during the first quarter. We have developed the theory of change, the research questions, the challenges to be addressed, and how the system is intended to function. And there are scientists from the different organizations will spend time, hopefully during their presence in COP and probably during the first quarter next year, to try and refine the experiment. Because right now, we want to demonstrate, like you have seen it on paper, but live, in the field. But that's not the experiment. The experiment requires a lot more refinement in possibly sensors and many other things, including monitoring programs, data collection. But you need to design the experiment first before you decide what information you need to collect. So hopefully the first quarter of next year would allow us to move from a demonstration into a potential experiment. We have one example for which we received some partial funding in Egypt, which was just thinking of just little funding, not a whole lot of money. And we intend to spend a substantive part of next year mobilizing jointly, the four of us, funding, each one of us with their own respective donors, or possibly each one of us with their own donors, and then you still put the funds in towards, we need to be a little bit creative. This model has the greatest application in the GCC, so that's why we're going from one country to another. The second best option would be the entirety of North Africa and the Middle East. So we are quite optimistic that during the course of next year, we would see at least some meaningful and substantive funding to allow us move into the real stage. We hope that this would make a good case for this to become part of the new portfolio in the CGIAR, which will start in 2025. So there is going to be a process within the CGIAR, and we hope that we would be able to make a good case with the support of our leaders that this be integrated into the future portfolio, because a concrete example of how centers are working in a multidisciplinary way together.
Thanks a lot. We have only a few more minutes, but I announced in the beginning that I'm going to ask the audience, and that's what I'm going to do. We have here in the front row 3 young people, as far as I can see from here. And one of the challenges we discuss everywhere in all panels all over the world is how can we make agriculture attractive for young people? And therefore my question to one of the 3 of you, are you interested in what you have heard here, or is this so theoretical that you have to say, I don't know, or is this something where you could say, this is the future and I'm interested in it? And you have the choice. You can answer all 3, but minimum 1 person has to answer. The microphone is coming. So, thanks a lot for being volunteered.
Oh, totally happy to volunteer, yeah. My name is Jessica Dunning. I'm actually from Vermont Law and Graduate School back in the United States. And we are here to support delegations with questions throughout the negotiations, but we've been lucky enough to sneak away to these wonderful talks. So thank you very much for everything that was spoken about here, especially because we are students that are very focused in environmental law, and we have a lot of students at our school focused in agriculture specifically. And so an easy answer is to your question of whether this is intriguing or we're excited about the future of this type of agriculture, the answer is yes. I think seeing this interdisciplinary and integrated solution to agriculture and is very uplifting and provides a lot of hope for our generation, and kind of it inspires us in the sense that we can work with farmers. We already have students that are already doing that, but as students hopefully going into policy or law, it's wonderful to see that this works, and by working in partnerships and through teamwork, and which is partly why many of us have gone to school at Vermont Law specifically, seeing how it works is just really inspiring, and especially
Yeah, my name's Christina. I'm also a student at Vermont Law Graduate School. I can only really echo what Jes said. A lot of this was very affirming. Because like you said earlier, everyone talks about climate change and a doomsday scenario. Like, we all know what's happening. However, like the solutions that you guys presented and talking about transdisciplinary approaches, I think is very important. It's a good thing to have, like a comprehensive approach. Like, again, like in terms of nature-based solutions, almost everything you mentioned is in that vein. and how integrating like traditional knowledge and like working with those and like uplifting those voices, because at the end of the day, like many scenarios, like in Canada and First Nations, like they had sustainable fisheries for hundreds of years, you know, and like kind of going back to that knowledge and having that like comprehensive approach, like you mentioned, is just very affirming for me.
I'm Yanisa. I'm also fellow students with Jes and Christina, and I just am incredibly blown away by how this entire week at COP, it has been incredible discussions regarding agriculture, and especially as we're thinking of the just transition, which requires inclusive, equitable participation of not only the way that we're retransforming our system, but just everything that was really touched on here, which was using agroecological principles to restore land and working directly with the stakeholders. And it's so true, and I think I love that you touched on the question of what is integration, and it's really not allowing the separation of sectors and government to create divide, but finding ways in order to bring the power back to stakeholders on the ground, trying to restore the land and keep the soils an important carbon sink. And I think also another panel really brought up this idea of using carbon markets to track the emissions from agriculture. And I think I'm just really interested in maybe that aspect and your opinions, and even thinking about maybe aquaculture, which I particularly don't know much about. But yeah, just in general, thank you for your time as well.
So thanks a lot for your contributions. Next time we are going to invite you to sit on the panel and we are going to listen for the future perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, we are at the end of this session, but we have now the pleasure to listen to some conclusions from the chair of the board of WorldFish. And apparently the four panelists have done a very good job, because you have already received a good feedback. So what are your personal conclusions and the conclusions for your work?
Well, what I will say is that I'm sure, based on what we've listened from these experts, I think it's been a very good side event. And I want to particularly thank the panelists, Marcella, Ahmed, and of course my friend Ali, who is really the key person that has always preached that in our approach to doing things in CGIAR, we need to come together as a cohesive system so that we'll be able to respond to some of these challenges in a better way, to be able to make impact. We had a conversation last year in Egypt, and we were thinking about Q4 meetings of the centers, and he suggested that we should come to Dubai because of COP28, and we listened to him, so here we are today. So thank you very much, and of course, my friend Alexander, you know, it's not easy to moderate sessions. And you can see that he's actually a professional when it comes to doing that. So I want to thank you immensely for what you've done. And also to the audience, you know, for your constructive engagements and questions and contributions. So thank you very much.
Thanks to you.